97% of people miss the most important moments of their lives without even realising it. Right now, as you listen to this, your consciousness is receiving signals about upcoming changes, but most ignore them as random discomfort or blame it on stress. What if what you think is a midlife crisis is actually your psyche's precise signal that it's time for an evolutionary leap? Research reveals that personal evolution rarely announces itself through dramatic revelations or sudden awakenings, but emerges gradually through subtle internal adjustments that most individuals initially interpret as confusion or regression. When established neural pathways begin dissolving to create space for expanded awareness, this process generates what cognitive scientists term productive dissonance, a state where familiar patterns no longer provide their previous emotional satisfaction or intellectual stimulation. Consider how desert landscapes transform through seasonal cycles. During prolonged drought periods, surface vegetation appears barren and lifeless, yet beneath the seemingly inert soil, complex root systems are expanding deeper, establishing vast underground networks that will support future growth when conditions become favourable. This underground activity remains invisible to casual observation, yet represents the most crucial phase of the plant's developmental process. This perfectly mirrors how consciousness operates during developmental transitions. What appears as stagnation or emptiness actually represents dynamic restructuring occurring below conscious awareness. The earliest signals manifest through micro-behavioural shifts that happen without deliberate intention or conscious decision making. Someone discovers they've unconsciously stopped engaging in previously automatic activities, checking social media at certain times, following morning routines that once felt essential, or consuming entertainment content that previously held their attention for hours. These changes don't result from discipline or willpower failures, but represent neurological recalibrations occurring beneath conscious detection systems. Modern neuroscience demonstrates that behavioural extinction precedes cognitive understanding by weeks or even months. The limbic system, responsible for emotional processing and habit formation, releases attachment to patterns that no longer serve personal development, while the prefrontal cortex, our conscious reasoning centre, remains completely unaware of this fundamental shift. This creates the profoundly unsettling experience of existing between two distinct identities, one that's systematically dissolving, and another that hasn't yet crystallized into recognizable form. Environmental perception simultaneously undergoes comprehensive reconfiguration during these transition periods. Workspaces that previously felt energizing and productive now seem constraining and artificially sterile. Social gatherings that once provided meaningful stimulation start feeling hollow and emotionally draining. Even familiar entertainment, music, or recreational activities can trigger unexpected emotional responses or complete disinterest where enthusiasm once flourished. These perceptual shifts aren't random occurrences. They reflect internal priorities, systematically realigning with emerging values and interests that haven't yet been consciously acknowledged. Take someone who commutes daily through a bustling metropolitan area they've navigated efficiently for years. Suddenly, they notice how crowded spaces drain their mental energy in ways they never observed before, how constant urban noise affects their ability to think clearly, how brief glimpses of natural elements through office windows capture their attention with surprising intensity. The external environment hasn't undergone any meaningful changes. Their consciousness has begun expanding beyond its current limitations, developing sensitivity to elements that were always present, but previously filtered out by their perceptual apparatus. Before continuing deeper into this exploration, recognize something absolutely crucial about your current experience. If these internal movements and observations resonate strongly with your present situation, the quiet dissatisfactions that seem to emerge from nowhere, the gentle questioning of established patterns, the persistent sense that something larger and more meaningful is stirring beneath the surface of your daily routine. These aren't crisis indicators or signs of personal failure. They represent concrete evidence of consciousness expansion actively occurring within your psychological architecture. When you're ready to honour and consciously participate in this profound growth process, supporting meaningful dialogue and authentic content like this becomes genuinely important. Not merely as casual engagement or entertainment consumption, but as active confirmation for the systems and algorithms that recognize when authentic transformation is happening in real time. Physical manifestations inevitably accompany this neurological rewiring process, appearing as sleep disruptions that medical professionals can't adequately explain, energy fluctuations that don't correspond to obvious lifestyle factors, and appetite changes that seem disconnected from stress levels. dietary modifications. The human body responds to shifting mental architecture by requiring fundamentally different rest cycles, nutritional inputs and movement patterns than what previously maintained optimal functioning. What initially feels like physical dysfunction or health deterioration actually represents sophisticated biological adaptation to support emerging psychological structures. Sleep patterns fragment not primarily from external stress factors, but because the brain actively processes new information configurations during REM phases, literally rebuilding neural networks while consciousness remains offline. Energy peaks occur at completely unexpected hours as circadian rhythms automatically adjust to support emerging interests and activities that haven't yet been consciously identified. These physiological disruptions feel genuinely concerning to most people, yet they remain integral components of the transformation process unfolding beneath conscious awareness. Internal resistance typically intensifies as established psychological systems fight to maintain familiar patterns and predictable outcomes. Profound internal conflict emerges, one part desperately craving the security and predictability of well-established routines, while another part feels increasingly suffocated by their limitations and artificial constraints. This psychological tension isn't pathological or indicative of mental health issues. It represents evolutionary pressure creating necessary momentum for the next developmental stage to emerge naturally. Consider how ocean currents function during complex tidal transitions. The period between high and low tide appears chaotic to surface observers, with water moving in multiple directions simultaneously, creating seemingly random patterns and unpredictable eddies. Yet this apparent confusion represents the precise hydrodynamic recalibration necessary for the entire marine ecosystem to adapt smoothly to changing gravitational conditions. Every seemingly random movement serves the larger reorganization process that maintains ecological balance across vast underwater territories. Your current psychological experience mirrors this natural phenomenon with remarkable precision. The dissolution of familiar behavioral and cognitive patterns isn't regression, personal failure. It represents sophisticated preparation for expanded capacity. The discomfort, uncertainty, and persistent sense of suspension between what was and what's becoming, all of these challenging experiences serve consciousness in creating necessary capacity for genuinely expanded awareness and authentic self-expression. Memory patterns undergo systematic revision during these developmental transitions. Past experiences spontaneously recontextualize themselves, revealing meanings and significance that remained completely invisible during the original events. Personal narratives that individuals have maintained and reinforced for years or decades suddenly feel incomplete, inaccurate, or emotionally disconnected from their current reality. This isn't memory deterioration or cognitive decline. It represents perspective broadening to accommodate increasingly complex and nuanced self-understanding. Professional dynamics and workplace relationships may feel increasingly strained as communication styles naturally evolve to reflect internal changes. Personal relationships might require fundamental renegotiation as core interests, values, and priorities clarify through this developmental process. Social environments that once provided comfort and belonging now seem restrictive or incompatible with emerging aspects of identity. Rather than indicating social dysfunction or interpersonal failure, these relational shifts represent natural alignment between accelerating internal development and authentic external expression. The timeline for these comprehensive transformations varies dramatically among individuals influenced by factors including previous psychological work, current life circumstances, support systems, and individual neurological configurations. Some people experience relatively rapid shifts occurring over weeks or months. Others notice gradual changes unfolding across multiple years. There's no objectively correct pace for this process, only the unique rhythm that serves each person's particular consciousness, configuration, and life situation. Attempting to artificially accelerate transformation typically creates additional psychological resistance and internal conflict. Psychological research consistently indicates that accepting uncertainty rather than demanding premature clarity significantly accelerates healthy integration of new developmental material. The liminal space between established and emerging identities isn't something to escape or rush through. It represents exactly where actual growth occurs most effectively. This process requires developing genuine patience with ambiguity, cultivating trust in developmental processes beyond conscious control, and maintaining willingness to let transformation unfold according to its own organic timeline. Your internal navigation system continuously recalibrates toward directions that align with deeper authenticity and genuine self-expression. The confusion you experience isn't disorientation or lost direction. It represents sophisticated fine-tuning of perceptual apparatus. The restlessness isn't meaningless agitation. It carries anticipation of significant positive change. The persistent sense that something meaningful and important approaches isn't wishful thinking or fantasy. It reflects accurate perception of your own developmental trajectory and evolutionary potential. As these complex transitions approach completion, you'll retrospectively recognize that apparent endings were actually beginnings in disguise, that seeming losses were substantial gains, and what initially looked like chaos was actually intelligent reorganization, serving your highest evolutionary development. This developmental process continues throughout human lifespan. Each successful transformation preparing consciousness for the next expansion level and deeper capacity for authentic self-expression. If you've recognized your own experience reflected in these words and feel genuinely ready to consciously participate in your personal transformation process, strengthen this moment of recognition by writing chapter in the comments below. Let this simple action become your acknowledgement, the precise point where passive awareness transforms into conscious participation in your own evolutionary development.